Good morning, everybody. I think it's afternoon now. Uh, I'm Seema Jhingam. I'm a commercial corporate lawyer. I've been practicing law for the last 18 years plus. I practice in areas including infrastructure, technology, satellites, telecommunication. In the last 10 years, I had the opportunity of working very closely with education companies, from Educom Solution to Global Indian Schools to Career Launcher. Worked with most of the education companies in India, and the key issue which comes to my mind when I look at structure, and I do a lot of work with private equity and venture capital fundraisers and bail funds. So the critical issue which comes to the investment cycle, it's not the issue of what is the valuation of the company or how good the business would do or how what is the scalability or how far the business would do. At the stage of the investment, the most critical issue which we have come across is how to invest in an education company. So you have two different sectors in education. One is the formal sector and one is the non-formal sector. So how many people are there from the brick and mortar formal sector, K-12 and higher education in the audience? Okay, so I can see most of the people are from non-formal sector, so that's good for you. In terms of where the real business is, as you can see from the predictions and the business studies, that most of the investments are happening or wanting to happen in the formal sector, because that's where the major numbers are being predicted in terms of growth, in terms of scalability, in terms of numbers. But that is a sector which is the K-12 and the higher education, where the biggest problem in terms of investment is posing a challenge. So my presentation would be basically focusing on what are the legal challenges, what is the regulatory environment in which we can invest and seek pre-investments or VC investments or seed capital, and what are the legal issues that we need to deal with. Can I go to the dice? Yeah. Okay. So we talk about a lot of interest by the venture capital funds and the P funds in the education sector. Let's just step back and understand what is the paradigm, what is the environment in which these startups or education entities are seeking investments from private equity. So first of all, let's just step back and see the environment. What is the backdrop of the formal education sector? So first of all, there is a concept called not-for-profit concept. It's sort of ironical. It's a business. It's an industry, probably the largest industry in terms of educating, largest in terms of the responsibility in bringing up children into the education stream. But we have also tagged along a concept called service. So education as a concept, as an industry, is termed by the government as a service industry or as a service to the nation, which should not be earning profit. Now that's a very interesting sort of thought of the government. How do you have business? How do you grow the business? How do you create industry? And how do you create numbers, profitability, scalability with a concept like trust, society, and Section 25 company? What does these structures really do mean? If you want to be in education, the reality is you'll have to have a not-for-profit institution to set up your business. We call it a business, but it's a charitable institution which are barred from any kind of profiteering. So what does it really mean? It basically means that you are allowed to create scalability, you're allowed to make profit, but what you're not allowed to distribute that profit. So the members, the trustees, or the governing council of that trust, or the relatives of the trustees are not supposed to be, the stakeholders in that sense are not supposed to be earning profits out of the business that they have set up. So how do we have a situation that you need to set up a K-12 school, you need to have a university which needs at least 100 crores to be set up. The stakeholder is supposed to invest money into it and not create profitability for the stakeholder. He would have taken loans, he would have invested his own money. So what is this reality? So how do we see hundreds of schools, how do we see hundreds of private universities mushrooming across? How do we see MBA colleges? What is the way that they are managing to make profits, to distribute profits, and also set up new universities? So let's understand the mechanics of that. So first of all, let's ask the question in the formal sector. So I see a lot of audience are from the non-formal sector. So the good news is there is no issues with vis-a-vis investment of the PE funds into the non-formal sector. You can have for-profit entities like partnership firms or a normal incorporated private limited company and seek investments. When it comes to non-formal sectors, then the question is, can PE investors invest in entities like trust or society or Section 25 company? Sadly, the answer is the PE investor or a VC fund cannot invest in a trust or a society. Yes, he can invest in a Section 25 company, but he will not be able to reap dividends out of it. So how do we manage that area? Also, I'll have a brief discussion on that. So where do the PE investors or the VC funds actually invest? Do you have any wild guess on it? How does the Cattell School fund itself? Anybody from the audience? Absolutely, yeah. So see, whereas there is a problem or a hardship, we find solutions as Indians. So one of the solution is that we have related party entities or services entities, or we call them management services company, which most of you would be interested in, because I think you are in the realm of services company. So that's where your interest will be. Most of these companies are either set up by the trustees who are setting up trust or are interested parties. So the PE investment comes into the entities which are called the management services company. Really, these are basically outsourcing companies providing services to the trust and societies. So the next question is, if that is the situation, and how do we have control on a trust? Because a trust is a charitable institution. It cannot distribute profit. You can't have any control. You have very stringent public charity laws. Just to step back a minute, we have public charity laws in most of the states, except for states like Haryana, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh. We don't have public charity laws. These are rather draconian acts where the charity commissioner has wide powers in terms of oversight over the operations of the trust, in terms of who are the trustees, when is the property being bought, how is the property being sold, what are the kind of, he has auditing rights. So that's the sort of a legal background for setting up a school and society in this country. So how do we have control over the trust? So here is a management service company which belongs to you. And you want to now set up a school where the trustees have to be independent, as we just discussed. It may have to be non-proprietary. So you can't really have yourself, your wife, your father, and your son as part of the members of the trust, which is generally the case with private limited companies. You can have stakeholders together as a family group. So you can't have a proprietary setup as a trust. You can't really have a direct relationship with that trust. So how do we really control this kind of an environment? Basically, how it is done is that you have, if you're a related party entity, which most of you are from the non-formal sector, if you are outsourcing service provider companies. Who are these service provider companies? The curriculum guys, the guys who are making pedagogy, making providing teacher training, giving services like recruitment services, or providing specialized sports extracurricular services to higher education institution or K-12 institutions. So these are the entities which have certain kind of long-term relationships or contracts, which I'll discuss a little later in this session. They have 3-4 different mechanisms to have control over the trust in society. One of them could be having a one-member nomination on the board of trustees. Second could be having, once you have a board of trustee and there are 3 and you're 1, you're sort of powerless in terms of number game. So what you have is the affirmative voting rights. So the critical issues related to the trust, which means it could be setting up a new school, investment cycle, the growth that you're going to be doing in that school, the number of people, employees that you will be employing, the kind of principal that you're going to be bringing, the fees or the curriculum mechanism that you will be devising for the school or the higher education institution. All of those issues are where you have your affirmative voting rights, which basically means that the trust cannot, or the society cannot pass resolutions or pass decisions related to those issues without having your consent. So that gives you, even if you're in minority as a service provider, that gives you a fair play in terms of regulating, in terms of maneuvering and operating the trust in society. The other is, good, you have a nomination, good, you have affirmative voting rights. What is the chance of you being kicked out? I mean, the three trustees don't like you anymore and they want to, move you out of the society. Well, then for that, you need to have a trust deed which is written in a way which the settler says this gentleman will be having a lifelong membership, and pursuant to him, he has the right of nomination. So these are the mechanics that you will adopt to have continuity on the trust, to have control on the trust on key decision-making powers, and have control on the operations as such. These are some of the issues which I have sort of discussed. There are many other ways that you can control. So just before going on the issues of what are the different collaboration or investment models that we have in the education sector, which I have sort of worked in last 10 years. And so most of you feel it cannot be done. Foreign companies cannot invest in India. Well, that's a myth. Education is 100% FDI automatic route allowed. So you have a situation where you have trust and anarchic trust and society laws. The other is you have foreign direct investment policy, which allows 100% automatic investment without any question asked, without any government approvals, no FIPB involved here, to invest in the education sector. So how do they invest? Can they invest in trust? The answer is no. Can they invest in societies? The answer is this is prohibited. Can they invest in Section 25 company, which is also a form of charitable institution? The answer is yes, but they can't invest, they can't take dividends out of the Section 25 company. So if they can't take the dividends and they're supposed to make FDI, what is the sense in that? I mean, this is beyond common logic or even sense. So that's where the structures that I've just discussed or will be discussing in the part of the presentation will come into play. Another very important area which has happened is the construction infrastructure sector. So you have a lot of infrastructure companies like DLF, Unitech, and you have a lot of Infinite Group, which have come up and set up educational infrastructure for universities, for K-12 schools. That's an area which has recently been allowed by the government on a 100% FDI basis without any approvals or capitalization norms. So let's now understand so we all understand that direct investments into the trust and societies are not possible. So let's analyze one by one the collaboration models or the investment strategies being adopted. And I'm sure it would be of interest to all of you, because these are the models that if you are going to be in formal sector or non-formal, whether providing services to formal sector or being the formal sector yourself, these are the models that you would see around you as common models being adopted. So one is the close-knit related party relationship. Okay, I have actually overstepped on one particular aspect, which is related to the outsourcing of services. Before we get into the models, what are the kind of services that an outsourcing company, so I'm assuming most of you are outsourcing companies providing curriculum, management services. What kind of services can you just go in the school or in the university and take charge and start doing servicing and management operation of the school? What is your view about it? Do you think you can sort of have that contract in your hand and start operating, let's say, Heritage School tomorrow? Is that possible? Any guesses to that? It is possible? Okay. Theoretically, no. Practically, yes. So you're right there, Ujjwal. So what happens is the key is the balance between the outsourcing of services. The fundamental is that CBSE, which is the affiliating board, or the private university acts, which are for your private university in higher education, or the institutions which are governing the education in India, which is the state education departments. Each state has a different education law. So if you want to go in education, please look at the jurisdiction that you're going to be going. Gujarat has completely different education environment as Delhi. So, and if you're going to Assam, which is completely diametrically opposite to what you have in Haryana. So you need to be very careful to this area that you're going and what are the educational laws of those area. Once you have looked at those laws, the common thread is none of the Indian education laws prohibit outsourcing of services. But the key thread is that you cannot outsource core academic and management services to outside companies. Which basically means that you can't pick up the entire operation management and hand it over to an outside management companies. The relationship has to be in terms of an enabler and not as a person who's actually running the service, running the school. So which basically means you can't import teachers or principals or other staff from outside of the university or outside of the K-12 school. You have to have key people and staff inside the company which are employees of these institutions. And then the extracurricular services could be sports, it could be languages, astronomy classes, core competency in curriculum, pedagogy, processes, systems, all of that can be outsourced, smart class, all of that can be given. And that's true for both higher education and K-12. One of the very important fundamental around which the entire education discussion in outsourcing revolves is arm's length pricing. So if you're going to be providing services to a not-for-profit charitable institution, you need to be very, very clear that your relationship with these institutions are arm's length, because you have public charity laws, a charity commissioner, you have CBSE, you have other regulators who will be looking at the kind of service fee that you are charging. I'll be spending just 2 minutes on what basically it means to have arm's length relationship. Arm's length relation is not a rocket science. It basically means that the service fee that you're collecting from these institutions, the formal institutions which are regulated, charitable, are commensurate to the services that you are providing. That means you can't be creating fluff agreements and trying to, on the paper, provide service and not actually deliver the service and create some service mechanism and payment mechanism. Those are very, very questionable structures and need to be avoided. In a recent, very, very recent Delhi High Court judgment, it's a division bench judgment, where they have gone into the details of what a related party relationship and what is the basis on which the fundamentals of outsourcing will be questioned. And this judgment went very point by point on the very fundamental of the entire structures that are being created in the education sector. So it's very critical to understand the mechanics of this judgment. The fundamental point what the judges made was that there is no bar in creating outsourcing agreements. There is no bar in even having relationships with your own related party entities. For example, the trust is owned by you and you have a company. There is no bar in or prohibition in having these two entities having commercial relationship. But what is needed to be looked at is the fee that is being paid. Is it reasonable? Is it justified? Is it commensurate with the services that is being provided? And is there any iota of personal gain or interest that the trustee is going to take home at the end of the day? That basically means, is any undue benefit going to the trustees through the outsourcing wings? That's the entire framework under which you have to function in the education sector, which is any pecuniary or non-pecuniary, or could be any kind of benefit which is going to the members of the trustees or managers or employees of the trust or the society, which is a formal education sector, to the non-formal sector, which is the services company and support companies. So what is required is you can do it, but make your relationship arm's length, comparable, justified, and reasonable, and probably do a transfer pricing study to see you map the kind of fees that you're taking, what the other service provider would have taken, what you can provide. Would Educom Solution, would Career Launcher, would Everon, would they charge a similar fee considering their brand value? Would they charge the same fee? And if you're charging the same fee as a startup, well, that's questionable, because you're right now at startup and you probably don't have the value addition or the kind of pedagogy or the curriculum which these companies are bringing in. So you need to lower it down to make it above board. My time is up, so should I just wrap it up quickly? All right. So I was just given 10 minutes. I'm going to quickly go through the structures which are prevalent in the industry right now. One is the management services arrangements, which are very much into the related party realm, which is where the trustees and the outsourced companies are by and large together. But they have the good sense of nominating their employees in the trust on the board of trustees so that they look unrelated, but they're technically related. So how do they manage this relationship is they provide non-core management services. Practically, they're doing everything. Theoretically, in terms of the drop of the contract, drop of the agreements that we do are more in terms of the fringe services and not the core management services. Then we have a scheme of nominating members on the board of directors. Then key management of the management committees are nominated by the service provider company. Management committee by law, by CBSE educational laws, and most of the education laws in the country require the management committee to be set up for the schools, which provides services which are basically the institution within the school which runs the school. Now, if an outsourced company wants to run the school from outside, that's typically a no-no. But what you do, how do you control the management committee is a key area. So you actually nominate your members to the management committee. There's certain government nominees, there are certain predetermined nominees on the management committee as per CBSE regulation. The rest of them are nominated by the management service companies. Then you do the recommendation on the principals and the manager, because principal is a key person who sort of runs the school. So she or he is sent by the management company to have control, operational control. And then the critical issue from the legal point of view should have is non-terminable long-term contracts. So what does that mean? Basically, it means do not, for God's sake, enter into 2 years term contract, because in 2 years, most of the school, or 3 years at the max, the principal, the teachers would know the know-how of running, the university principal would know, the administrator would know how to run the university or the college or the school. And the itch is there to break the relationship. Because the teachers are on your payroll, the principal is on your payroll, so it's very interesting because you begin to feel the sort of the revenue share model sort of begin to pinch the institutions. So what you do is have long-term 15 years, 20 years contracts which are non-terminable in nature. Theoretically, they're non-terminable. Law allows you to terminate even non-terminable contracts. So what follows is the hefty liquidated damages which are pre-agreed. So that act as a pressure point while drafting these management services contracts. The second arrangement could be if you are already into a lot of schools and you have a brand of your own, you can simply go into a sort of a laid-back arrangement, which is brand licensing arrangements. These are arrangements where you're not going to run the institutions, you're going to be giving your brand for the institution to run. For example, DPS Society do not really get into the mechanics of working into this institution. They just give their brand, and you sort of build on the brand. So when you're giving your brand to these institutions, what you need to be clear on, what is the scope and the objective and the territory on which you're giving the brand. So what are the non-competing clauses? How are you protecting your brand in terms of intellectual right protection? So all of that would need to come under the brand protection and the brand license agreements. The other way is you have franchise arrangement. A franchise arrangement does not really mean that you will be owning the trust or you will be having any kind of relationship with the trust or the members of the trustee. You're not going to be nominating any trustees to the board. You will be simply a franchisor, giving your best practices, your brand name, your pedagogy, your curriculum, your methodology of running the school to the school, which will be running it on its own or through some of the people that you have nominated. So it's more of a more involved strategy as a brand license strategy, but it's a sort of less inclusive in terms of management services agreement, which is more related party transactions. The most popular model, which I see happening today, is a collaboration model, which is collaboration between the real estate developers and the education company. So most of the schools, the corporatization of the school that which is happening today, whether it is at Enron level or at Educom Solution or Career Launcher or even GIF, most of these are based on these models, which is marrying together of the land capability and infrastructure capability with the capability of the school education companies, which bring in pedagogy, content, brand name. So what it does is that the capex and the capital investment cost of setting up a school is passed off to the real estate developer, and the real mannerism of or the process of running the school is given away to the education services company. So it's a very convenient situation where capex is reduced for one, which is the education company, and the real estate guy anyway can't interfere in the education process. So it's a very interesting mix of collaboration, which is very popularly happening around the country these days. So I'll sort of end it here, but I'm sure if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, and I'll be still there to address any of your questions. Thank you.